All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Lockup Shutdown podcast. My name's Monica. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Zach. How's it going today?
Going pretty good. Just finished watching one of the craziest football games I've watched in a long time on Monday Night Football with the Patriots and Bills, and caps off a crazy yet entertaining week like always. It seems like in the NFL.
It certainly was a very crazy game. Today, we'll talk about Mike Zimmer's inevitable fate with the Vikings, decide whether or not the Colts are a deep playoff team, and discuss if the AFC West is anyone's to win. But first, as always, it's our biggest surprise from the week behind. Zach, as always, if you do the honors.
My first surprise is actually gonna come from Cincinnati with the Chargers and the Bengals. I was talking about how good the Bengals have been so far, and as soon as you think they fix their issues, they come out and do what they did against the Chargers and got outscored 24-0 to start the game, and then try and make a comeback, make it 24-22, and then in the end give up 17 more points and lose that game at home by 19 to the Los Angeles Chargers. After you think the Chargers are headed downhill and the Bengals are going uphill, the Chargers show us that they're still a legit team and beat the Bengals in almost every aspect of the game.
It certainly was a very interesting and very surprising game at that one. My personal biggest surprise was something that I didn't think could possibly top last week, having a Monday Night Football between the Seahawks and Washington football team, but truthfully, my biggest surprise was just how awful the Bills and Pats game was, obviously with all the weather issues and whatnot. Pats won that game 14-10. You know, I expected to see a freshly plowed snow game, a freezing cold shootout between two young, talented quarterbacks, and instead I got a game of Madden 20, with nothing but run plays and hurricane force winds. Mac Jones only had 3 attempts on passing, 2 of which are completed for 19 yards. The Pats had 46 run plays the entire game. Sean McDermott seemed to trust his quarterback more to throw the ball, as Josh Allen went 15 for 30 for just 145 yards and a touchdown. The punting and kicking was absolutely awful the entire game, and there was plenty of it to go around, considering the low score. It was easily one of the most frustrating games I've watched in a while, especially after expecting so much more exciting, I guess. I was hoping I would get to see Mac Jones in action, maybe prove me wrong for my awful take earlier this season about him, but we didn't see much of anything in this game, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to wait 2 weeks to really start thinking about a formal apology to Mac Jones anytime soon.
Yeah, that apology letter should be pretty much well written by now. Maybe write the conclusion after another different game where the Patriots throw it more than 3 times, which is one of the craziest things I've seen. But hey, if the run is working, then you might as well keep doing it. And if you rush for 222 yards, I don't think anyone can blame you for running it 46 times in a game. And the Bills tried to throw it, and it didn't work. So yeah, I'd say that was surprising. Although with the wind 50 miles an hour in Buffalo, I guess I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, I certainly didn't expect Mac Jones to only attempt 3 passes the whole game.
The NFL record for the least passing attempts by a team in a game was set by the Bills in 1974, so it's quite ironic that they were the only one actually passing the ball today. Let's move on and talk about an unfortunate team, that being the Minnesota Vikings, after being the first team to actually lose to the Lions. I'm sure Vikings fans will never hear the end of that until the start of next season, or until the Lions beat another team and they get to share the pain with someone else. But Mike Zimmer is looking to be fired after such an unfortunate performance. Do you think that Mike Zimmer will last until next season as the Vikings head coach?
I do think he's going to last until next season. I think that although the Vikings record doesn't look as pretty as many would like at the 5-7 mark, if you look at their schedule, all 7 of their losses have been within one possession. So I think they're right there with every team, and they haven't had too many games all season that haven't come down to the wire. Even some of their wins, they got the overtime win against the Panthers. Their last game against the Lions before this, they won on a last-second field goal. So they've got some crazy games, and I think the Vikings are finally putting some of the pieces together, and Dalvin Cook was out against the Lions, so I think that was a huge reason why they may not have been up to par against the Lions. But still, even without Dalvin Cook, I expected them to beat the Lions. So I think it's disappointing for Mike Zimmer, but I'm not expecting him to not be the head coach of the Vikings unless something collapses in the last 5 weeks of the season.
On the contrary, I personally think that if Mike Zimmer lasts until next season, then whoever upper management is at the Minnesota Vikings facility needs to be fired, and then new upper management needs to fire Mike Zimmer. And he has a 19-40 record versus winning record teams in his coaching career. He's just 2-4 in the playoffs, and it seems that he's made a Vikings team made to stagnate at the middle of the league and never do anything better than that, similar to the Sacramento Kings in basketball or something. Mike Zimmer is not a very great head coach. Whoever the GM for the Vikings is not a very great GM. I don't think things are clicking for the Vikings. If your quarterback is as mediocre as Kirk Cousins, I think it's time to start reconsidering who you have in management and just go for a tank season, try to get a better quarterback. If Mike Zimmer lasts until next year, it's going to be a miracle.
Yeah, but the Vikings weren't making progress each year. I would be okay with getting rid of Mike Zimmer, but you got Kirk Cousins, who you mentioned earlier. He's thrown 25 touchdowns and 3 interceptions this entire season. You can't really ask for much better than that, averaging over 2 touchdowns a game and 0.25 interceptions a game is pretty solid, and Justin Jefferson having his second season breakout year after also breaking out in his rookie year, as well as Adam Thielen, who's maybe not having his best year, but certainly still having a good year with 10 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook doing really good, but has missed 3 games, so that hurts the Vikings. And I think they're making progress, and maybe if Aaron Rodgers leaves the Packers, who knows, the Vikings got a chance to win the division potentially.
It would certainly be a very interesting division without Aaron Rodgers in it, that's for sure. But I still think I'm going to take Justin Fields to start winning that division more often after Aaron Rodgers retires. But that's assuming Matt Nagy gets fired and doesn't get replaced with Ravens offensive coordinator Greg Roman, of all people. Let's move on and talk about a different team down to the south of Minnesota. It's the New Orleans Saints, who have had an absolute struggle of a collapse in the last few weeks, as I talked about in the last episode. And it only seemed to get worse after a loss to, I believe, the Cowboys this week? Was it the Cowboys? I don't remember who.
It was the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football for the Saints to make it 5 in a row now, and you've got the fans in New Orleans wonder whether it's time to hit the panic button and if Jameis Winston might be the reason why they're 0-5 for, I guess, the absence of Jameis Winston. They're 5-2 with Jameis Winston at quarterback, but have now dropped to 0-5 without Jameis Winston behind center. So certainly some questions to be asked, but I think Jameis Winston's obviously the best quarterback on the team and a big reason why they're not winning a game. But I wouldn't go as far to say that Jameis Winston is the future of the Saints. I think by the end of next season, Jameis Winston won't be the starting quarterback of the Saints anymore.
Right. I think I have to disagree with that one. I think that the future is most certainly lying in Jameis Winston's hands, at least for the next handful of years, maybe just until Jameis Winston decides to retire even. Like you said, Jameis was 5-2 as a starter. He had over 1,100 yards. He was 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Trevor Siemian obviously was in there for a while. He went 1-4, had 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Similar numbers, but just wasn't getting it done. Wasn't on the scoreboard quite as much. Wasn't winning games quite as much, very clearly. And then Taysom Hill comes in and shows us why he's not a quarterback. Taysom Hill went 19 for 41, had 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Let's be real here, Taysom Hill is not a viable starting quarterback, and I think Sean Payton completely screwed up by paying him that much to stay on their team. Again, he's just a gadget player, he's just there for the trick plays, and that's cool and all, but he doesn't deserve quarterback money for that one, that's for sure. Here's what I think. If Michael Thomas returns, and the Saints draft themselves a wide receiver, Jameis is going to have one of the best seasons of his career next year and establish himself as the Saints quarterback for the next handful of years. Because I think that Jameis Winston is a future for the Saints, at least the immediate future. The next 5 years, I think we're going to see Jameis Winston as a starter for the Saints, and depending on whether he gets better or gets worse, by the end of that 5 years, we'll either see them draft a new quarterback, or see Jameis Winston still in the league doing well. Probably be on the decline by the end of that, but certainly will be doing well, and that's what I think Jameis Winston is as far as the New Orleans Saints go.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see him with a healthy roster, at least, as you mentioned. Michael Thomas hasn't played a game all season, and then Alvin Kamara's misses fair share of games as well, so maybe if they get another receiver, they got a chance to create something offensively. But I think their future, if they want to get back to the Super Bowl and playoffs and create the next Drew Brees, I don't think Jameis Winston is the guy for them to try and make that happen.
Well, maybe in a few years that one's gonna be on our worst takes of all time. Maybe mine will be. Who knows? But let's talk about our worst takes through 3/4 of the season. It's our quarterly report, seeing as we are 3/4 through the season. I think I'm gonna start us off by talking about my best take of the season, which was me saying that the Lions could beat the Vikings. I remember you saying that the Bears were the last chance for the Lions to win a game this season, whereas I said that the Lions had 5 winnable games this season, being the Bears, Vikings, Broncos, Falcons, and Seahawks, all as I had listed them before, though I believe I listed them out of order when I said it in the last... what was that, the last episode? Whatever, that aged really well apparently, because the Lions, on a last-second touchdown, beat the Vikings 29-27. When I made this take, the Lions were coming off a tie with the Steelers, close loss to the Browns with their backup quarterback starting. It was very clear that they were due for a win sometime soon. Fortunately, they weren't able to get them against the Bears, which led to a very great moment in the podcast. And then, obviously, the Lions this week ended up beating the Vikings. I'm just going to say it right now. I called it.
That was a great win from the Lions, and I was shocked that they were actually able to play a full 60 minutes and score more than the other team, but
I think they're going to do it twice more this season, in fact.
I think you can't make excuses for the Vikings because the next man up mentality, but they were missing one of the best players in the league in Dalvin Cook, but we'll see if the Lions can keep it up, and who knows, maybe they can try and squeak ahead of the Chicago Bears and embarrass Chicago with how bad they are. The
Absolutely.
Lions still haven't been eliminated from the playoffs mathematically as well, so who knows? The Lions are a playoff team.
Maybe. Why don't you give us your best take, or maybe my worst take? You can start off with whichever you'd like.
I think my favorite take has got to be from when we were talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had just given up 30 points to the Chargers, 36 points to the Ravens, and 29 points to the Browns. And I went on to say that the key reason behind the Chiefs' struggles is their defense, and that they have one of the best offenses someone's seen in a long time, and I think that still holds true, and that the defensive issues I mentioned have finally been solved, and that's a big reason as to why they've won 5 straight games. In the win streak, they've held the Packers to 7 points, held the Raiders to 14 points, held the Cowboys 9 points, and then on Sunday night, the Broncos only scored 9 points. So that's 4 straight games and no one scored more than 14 points. And with the offense that they have, I think that's why they've been so successful recently and are atop the AFC West.
Absolutely. The Chiefs have certainly made a very good comeback as far as the season has gone. They've we talked about the biggest fall-offs of the last season, but I think the Chiefs have had a bit of a reverse fall-off here. They've certainly seemed to have pieced things together, and I think they're going to have a pretty great playoff run before inevitably losing to the Bills.
Yeah, they're getting hot at the right time, and as soon as everyone thinks they've figured out the Chiefs in their 3-4 start, you go and look at the Chiefs. Now they're 8-4 and looking like the typical Super Bowl contenders that we expect them to be now. So
Absolutely.
we'll see what happens, but glad to say that no one said didn't see it coming if they fixed one thing, and there you go. They're able to fix that key piece of their defense, and now they're well-oiled machine.
Yeah, well, let's talk about something you didn't see coming, why don't we? Earlier in the season, we talked about the Dolphins' defense and concluded that the Dolphins' defense wasn't as underrated as the eye test might have given away. Of course, I was forced to agree because obviously their statistical level was awful. They were basically dead last in the league in every defensive category out there. And so I had to switch up my take, which was going to be the Dolphins' defense was underrated. My take would have been pretty realistic, considering the comeback they've had in the season, going from 1-7 to now 6-7 on the year. They've moved up to 12th in the league in quarterback sacks, 25th in passing yards allowed, which isn't much, but they were 31st in the league in that category at one point. I think they might have been dead last even. They are now 10th in rushing yards allowed, coming from 19th in the league. Their offense is playing much better, and the defense's lives are being made much easier. It's starting to become clear that statistically, they didn't seem good, but the offense wasn't performing, and so the defense had to carry the slack a little bit, and unfortunately, they weren't able to. The Dolphins' defense is a lot more underrated than might have met the eye, at least.
They are better than I thought, but I'm still not going to call them a great defense. I got to get a few more samples out of them, just because in this 5-game win streak, they've been the beneficiary of a pretty easy schedule. They played the Texans, the Jets, the Panthers, and the Giants, and then one game against the Ravens, which they looked really good in. But besides that, you got 4 teams that may have 4 of the worst offenses in the NFL. So we'll see if the Giants can, or if the Dolphins can piece it together, and who knows, maybe make a late run at the playoffs with how close this AFC is, but I'm not fully convinced on the Dolphins just yet, which may make this take even worse. I'm doubling down on it, but that's where I stand right now, is that the Dolphins still haven't convinced me they have a top half of the league defense.
It's never bad to double down on a take, but I don't think I'm going to want to double down on the take that you're about to present to me.
Yeah, you've had a few accurate takes, so you made me look a little bit, and I'll go all the way back to the beginning of the show when we said, will Joe Burrow not have a successful career due to the lack of talent on this Bengals offensive line? And you thought Joe Burrow's future was in jeopardy when we were talking about this, and safe to say, both for the blessing of the NFL and for the fans, that Joe Burrow's career is alive and well, and he has been dominant this year and gotten everyone involved. He kept his connection up with Jamar Chase, and this is sort of a double-edged sword for you, that Joe Burrow's had the year that he's had, but also with how good the Bengals offensive line has been. You got Joe Burrow torching the league, but in the backfield you also got Joe Mixon, who's rushed for a touchdown in the last 6 games and has 9 touchdowns in those last 6 games. So credit to him, and when he rushes for 123 yards against the Raiders and then 165 yards against the Steelers, you gotta give him credit and give that O-line their money. Hopefully Joe Burrow's treating them to a nice steak or two after the protection he's gotten recently.
Absolutely, and like you said, those games against the Raiders and the Steelers, those are 2 of the best run defenses in the league, and it's certainly interesting to see how the Bengals' offensive line has improved since last season, and especially since the first few weeks of the season when I was inevitably making that awful take. Joe Burrow might just be the best out of that draft class. Maybe he's starting to prove why he's the number 1 pick and why Justin Herbert wasn't. But we'll just have to see. I mean, well, we did see this week, last week. When did the Chargers play the Bengals?
This week.
Yeah.
This week, just about 48 hours ago. That was my surprise of the week, that Joe Burrow maybe took that a little bit personal, that he was selected behind Joe Burrow, and
still lost though.
Had 3 touchdowns and 317 yards against the Bengals this week.
Yeah, Joe Burrow definitely didn't win that game, but I think as we go into the future, maybe we could see Joe Burrow start to win that game more often. Those 2 will always be compared, that's for sure. I don't know if Tua's going to be in the same conversation, but that's a conversation for another week. Let's move on from our quarterly report and talk about our final topic of today. The AFC West is always a very interesting race, and usually it's the Chiefs that are winning, especially nowadays. Maybe in the past it was mostly the Chargers, sometimes the Broncos, at least when they had Peyton Manning. Do we think this year, with how close the race is, that the AFC West is anyone's to win?
I'm going to go out and say that it's only going to be the Chiefs and Chargers in consideration, but I would fairly certainly take the Chiefs over the Chargers, although the LA does still have a chance. I'm going to take the Chiefs in this one with how good they've been the past 5 weeks that I mentioned earlier. They look hard to beat, and I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes in clutch time when the season is winding down, and they got another winnable game this week against the Raiders, and then that huge game against the Chargers next Thursday, the week before Christmas. So that one will might as well determine the winner of the division, but I think the Chiefs are going to pull it out and win the AFC West once again.
I'm going to go as far as to say you're only half right there. Yes, we will see Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs win the division of the AFC West. I think that was pretty obvious from the start of the season, but obviously they had that slow, struggling start, so unfortunately, they figured everything out, and we're definitely going to see the Chiefs winning the AFC West. However, the Chargers aren't in it by any means. I'm going to go as far as to say that the Chargers have no shot at winning the AFC West this year, and it's just Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' to win. The Chargers played way too inconsistently to possibly win the division. We've discussed them a lot, and we'll direct you to some other episode, probably. I don't know. Just go watch our other episodes. They're much more entertaining than... They're so entertaining. We're so entertaining to watch. No one's watching this right now. The Broncos have made a surprising run this season, but they're going to fall just short of the playoffs this year. And the Raiders, early in the season, seemed destined for great things, but obviously the controversies happened, and that took apart the organization enough for the collapse that they've had so far this season. Let's be real here. It's not anybody's to win by any means. It's just the Chiefs to win.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs, like you said, have got to be the favorites, but with that big game coming up in week 15, I don't want to rule anything out just yet, and the Chiefs certainly don't have an easy schedule, but we've got the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Broncos the 3 weeks after that to finish out the season. So, few upset alerts maybe with the Steelers and the Bengals trying to upset the Chiefs, and if the Chargers win the second game, week 15, they'll have the head-to-head over the Chiefs, and therefore the Chiefs will have to have an outright better record. So I'm not willing to go all in on the Chiefs, as it sounds like he might be wanting to go all in on them.
Well, let's talk about our upset alerts for this week, because it's time to finish things off with the lightning fast picks. Starting off right away, it's Thursday night football between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings. I know Noah's going to have a fun time with these two teams, considering those are his favorite two teams.
Yep, two teams that probably are tough to root for right now. I seem to never know what you're going to get from them week in, week out, but with the Vikings losing to the Lions and the Steelers finding a way to beat the Ravens last week, I'm going to have to take the Steelers to win it once again.
It's not often that I take the Steelers in any given one of these games, but I'm going to have to take the Steelers here. I think it's a no-brainer after what Minnesota just did. However, Pittsburgh did have that tie against the Lions, so you can't exactly count the Vikings out just yet. We've got another AFC North matchup. It's between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns.
I've learned to never know what to expect from the AFC North, especially in a head-to-head matchup between those two. So for this one, I don't really have much expectations, and I'm just going to go with the home team on this one and pick the Cleveland Browns.
After the Marlon Humphrey injury has completely devastated the Ravens' defensive backcourt, I'm not trusting Anthony Averett not to give up 200 yards to Jarvis Landry in this next game. Give me the Cleveland Browns on this one. Next up, we've got the Jags and the Titans. I think this is a pretty easy one. Even without Derrick Henry, I think it's got to be the Titans over the Jags.
Yeah, I know what to expect in this one. I'm going to take the home team once again with the Titans rolling over the Jags pretty easily on Sunday.
We just talked about the AFC West in our last segment. Now it's an AFC West matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. I feel like I'd be a hypocrite immediately to say that the Raiders would win, so give me the Kansas City Chiefs on this one.
Yeah, if this was in week 3, maybe I might take the Raiders, but it's not. It's week 14, and these teams have changed their ways for better or for worse, and I'm going to take the new Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, when it did happen in week 2 or 3, you'd still pick the Chiefs anyway, so regardless, It's the New Orleans Saints and the New York Jets. This is not a very good game, but I think that the Jets might just come out with an upset, considering the Saints quarterback situation.
Saints quarterback action isn't great, and Zach Wilson looked alright against the Eagles, but I think Taysom Hill's gonna figure it out if he's able to start at quarterback, and the Saints are gonna beat the New York Jets.
I think the only thing he's going to figure out is that the answer is no. Next up, we've got the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington football team. I know that this one's going to hurt you to try and answer as a Washington football team fan, but let's be real here. The only answer that you can say that isn't biased is the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm not gonna say that. If you look at the last 4 weeks, Washington's beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, beaten the Panthers, beaten the Seahawks, beaten the Raiders. And I don't see the Cowboys as much different than any of those teams. I think the Washington football team comes jacked up, not ready to lose to the Cowboys at home. And they beat the Cowboys and make the NFC East a 1-game separation. And who knows, maybe they'll go on to win the NFC East if they win this weekend.
The
I'm
only
gonna take
way
the Washington football team.
The only way that the Washington football team can possibly win this game is if Dak Prescott trips over that awful grass at FedEx Field and breaks his leg again. Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Not exactly the best game on the watch this week, but I think I'm gonna have to pick the Panthers for this one. I think Cam Newton might have a bounce back game after an awful the Panthers were on a bye week, so they had a pretty awful game 2 weeks ago, but I think Cam Newton's ready to bounce back after that bye week.
Yeah, Cam's not going to be at his MVP level, but he's definitely not going to be throwing all those interceptions again. I'm going to stick with you and take the Carolina Panthers as well.
Next up, we've got the Seattle Seahawks and the Houston Texans. Why don't you start us off, Zach?
Yep, hard to bet for the Texans after they just got shut out by the Colts and the Seahawks beat the 49ers. So, although the Seahawks have had plenty of their struggles so far this season, I'm still gonna take them over the Texans.
I think that the Seahawks struggles will add up. Again, the Seahawks have absolutely no pass defense, and I think it might be worse than whatever practice squad the Ravens are going to be starting this Sunday. I'm going to have to say that Tyrod Taylor might actually take advantage of the weak Seahawks defense, and I'm going to say that the Houston Texans are also going to get a win. That's right. The Jets and the Houston Texans winning in the same week. That would be incredible, wouldn't it? Next up, we've got the Lions and the Detroit... the Lions and the Detroit Lions. It's the Lions and the Broncos.
Let's see if you have the Lions, Texans, and Jets all winning in this week, but with me, I'm going to pick the Broncos. They've stuck around in the division for a little bit longer with the easier game, I'd say, against the Lions. And I think their run attack plus Teddy Bridgewater is going to be too much for the Lions to handle.
I absolutely agree with you there. I would never say that the Jets, Texans, and Lions are certainly going to be winning in the same week. Now, that's just a little bit too far. But that would be a very interesting triple crown to have. Give me Teddy Bridgewater again, DETDEN. Give me the Denver Broncos. Next up, we've got the Giants and the Chargers. A classic game if Eli Manning were still starting at quarterback, but unfortunately he is not. But give me the Chargers regardless.
Yep, the Chargers have looked really good last week. Giants looked really bad last week, and for that reason, I'm gonna take the Chargers at home. Although they may not have too many fans there, I think it'll still be the home field advantage, and they'll take full advantage of that against the Giants.
Absolutely. Next up, we've got the 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals. This one's a classic reminiscent of some old Super Bowls. But I think unlike those old Super Bowls, we're going to see Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals come out with a win in this one.
Yeah, this one's going to be a really good game. Two teams that like to run the ball. And for this game, I'm going to take the San Francisco 49ers over the Bengals. I think if Deebo Samuel is back for the 49ers, he's embraced that, I don't even know what to call it, but a wide receiver running back role, and he's executed it perfectly along with Elijah Mitchell. And I think Jimmy G will beat Joe Burrow this week.
Next up, we have something that could be a preview of a Super Bowl to come. It's the Buffalo Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
The Bills looked not great against the Patriots, but I'll give that excuse to the weather. But even still, I'm going to take the Bucs 9 times out of 10 at home against probably any team in the league. But this week it just happens to be the Bills, and I'll be on Tom Brady's side in this one.
I think the opposite. I think we're going to have a Bills Mafia coming into the Raymond James Stadium and coming out with a W. Give me Josh Allen in the Buffalo Bills over the veteran Tom Brady. Next up, it's Sunday Night Football between the Bears and the Packers. An awful game. Give me the Packers. Aaron Rodgers still owns you.
Yeah, Brandon Rodgers is going to own the Bears once again, as he's done probably his entire career. Probably not the best game to be in prime time, as it'll probably be done before halftime. But with that being said, I'm going to take the Packers over the Bears.
And last up, it's Monday Night Football. One of the more interesting games of the entire season between the talented LA Rams and the number 1 seed Arizona Cardinals.
Yep, the Cardinals came back full health last week, and Kyler Murray torched the Bears for 4 touchdowns, which is probably to be not 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns from him, plus 2 on the ground, so 4 total touchdowns. And that pairing of him and DeAndre Hopkins is back in full force, and I expect that once again against the Jalen Ramsey and the Rams, and Arizona Cardinals will come out on top once again over the Rams.
It was certainly interesting earlier this season when the Cardinals knocked off the Rams and everyone started to realize that the Cardinals were a legit threat in the season. I think I'm going to have to go with the LA Rams on this one. The Cardinals have to lose to somebody eventually, and I think of all teams that are going to do it, I don't think there's any way they can possibly sweep this very talented Rams team. Give me the Rams on this one. And that is all that we have time for. How are we feeling about this one, Zach?
This was a good week, and the craziness of last week doesn't give us too much time to recover. For this week, with some key matchups going on with the Cowboys and Washington, as well as another AFC North matchup for the Ravens. So as you scroll through the schedule, see a lot of divisional matchups with the Raiders and Chiefs, Jags, Titans, and then the Bears, Packers, Rams, Cardinals. So I think both divisional implications as well as wild card and playoff implications this week. And we're getting down to the nitty gritty, where every game seems to be worth more than it is at the beginning of the season, and it'll be the great time for NFL football.
Absolutely. It's certainly an exciting week ahead of us, and certainly an exciting handful of weeks ahead of us as we get closer to the playoffs. But until then, it's time for us to lock up and shut down.